There comes a moment in your life when you stop asking, why do people treat me this way? And you start asking, why did I ever believe I deserved it? And that single question changes everything. There comes a moment when a person looks at their life and realizes something has been quietly breaking them, not in loud, dramatic ways, but in small, almost invisible pieces. Those moments when you waited for someone's call that never came, those nights when you replayed conversations trying to understand what you did wrong, those days when you accepted less because you hoped less would someday turn into more. That's where the real damage happens. Not in the storms, but in the draughts, in the emptiness, in the tiny wounds that barely bleed yet leave scars that last years. You stop accepting bare minimum love isn't just a motivational phrase, it's a transformation. It's a calling. It's the moment when something inside you refuses to keep living life in grayscale. It's when your heart finally whispers, I deserve more. And this time, you listen. When you reach that point, your vision shifts. You stop celebrating inconsistent affection like it's rare gold. You stop mistaking delayed replies as proof of someone's busy life, when deep down you know they reply instantly to the people they prioritize. You stop letting small gestures convince you that maybe, just maybe, this time things will be different. Because you've seen the pattern too many times, and patterns don't lie even when people do. There's a story I once heard about a woman who waited 6 years for someone to figure himself out. She kept telling her friends, he's just confused, he needs time, he's been hurt before, and maybe he was all those things. But while she gave him space, patience, forgiveness, understanding, and every second chance possible, he gave her crumbs, just enough love to keep her hopeful, but never enough to make her feel secure. The day she left, he was shocked, as if she was supposed to wait forever. But she wasn't leaving because he was a bad person. She was leaving because she finally respected herself enough to stop living in emotional leftovers. That moment is life-changing. Self-respect doesn't show up with fireworks. It arrives quietly. It shows up when you stop responding instantly to someone who never makes time for you. It shows up when you stop rearranging your world for someone who won't adjust a single minute for you. It shows up when you stop reading between the lines of vague messages, searching for meaning that isn't there. It's not about being cold. It's not about becoming unkind. It's not about turning your heart into stone. It's about recognizing that your kindness is a gift, and gifts should be valued, not taken advantage of. Many people stay in bare, minimum relationships because they're terrified of losing what little they have. They hold on to small pieces of affection the way a drowning person clings to a floating plank. But survival is not the same as living, and emotional starvation is not the same as love. When you start to respect yourself, you stop asking for more from someone who has already shown you their maximum. That is not cruelty, that is clarity. You understand that someone's lack of effort is not a puzzle to solve, it's an answer. And yes, it hurts. It hurts because you still care. It hurts because you remember the good moments. It hurts because you gave your heart sincerely and you wanted that sincerity to be enough. But here's the truth many people ignore. You can love someone deeply and still walk away. You can wish someone well and still close the door. You can forgive someone and still never look back. That's not giving up. That's growing up. Once you stop accepting bare, minimum love, the world looks different. You start recognizing things you used to ignore. You notice how peaceful your life feels without constant overthinking. You realize how heavy emotional confusion was. You feel proud when you say no for the first time because you used to give endless yeses to people who barely showed up. You understand that real love isn't something you beg for. It's something someone willingly gives. There's a certain beauty in reclaiming your worth. It's not loud, it's quiet, steady, powerful. It's the moment you choose yourself even when your heart trembles. It's the moment you stop explaining why you deserve basic kindness. It's the moment you stop shrinking your needs to make someone else comfortable. For a long time, Many people think love requires suffering. They believe patience means waiting indefinitely. They believe loyalty means deleting their own needs. But real love does not ask you to betray yourself. Real love expands you. It supports you. It meets you halfway, not barely at the doorstep. One day you wake up and say, I'm done with almost love. Almost love is the message that arrives only when you pull away. It's the visit that comes when someone feels you slipping. It's the promises with no actions behind them. It's the emotional roller coaster that leaves you dizzy, drained, and doubting yourself. Almost love feels intense but never stable. It feels thrilling but never safe. It feels like potential but not reality. But when you begin to respect yourself, you stop being seduced by potential. You stop falling for maybe. You stop believing in love that requires you to suffer first in hopes of being appreciated later. People often think losing someone means losing love, but that's not true. The real loss is staying in a relationship where your soul slowly dims. The real loss is giving years of your life to someone who gives you moments. The real loss is living in a constant state of emotional uncertainty. But when you stop accepting bare, minimum love, you gain something extraordinary, your freedom. The freedom to choose better, to love better, to be treated better. Your energy shifts. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop proving. You stop overthinking. You stop fighting for something that's dying while pretending it's alive. You allow yourself to walk away from confusion and walk toward clarity. And here's the beautiful part. Once you stop accepting bare, minimum love, you start attracting maximum effort. Not because you suddenly became more valuable. You were always valuable. But because your boundaries become stronger, because your presence becomes selective, because your heart becomes wiser. Someone who truly wants you won't make you guess. Someone who cares won't treat your feelings as optional. Someone who values you won't wait until you're gone to realize your worth. And someone who is meant for you will not require you to lower your standards. They will rise to meet them. There's a quiet revolution that happens when you finally say, I deserve better. It's not loud. It doesn't need applause. But it changes everything. You stop romanticizing effort that hurts you. You stop forgiving actions that break trust. You stop confusing anxiety with excitement. You stop calling it love when it's really survival. You become the version of yourself you once doubted you could be, the version that chooses peace over chaos, effort over excuses, and truth over illusions. And one day, long after you've healed, someone will show up and meet you with the same energy you've always given. And it will feel different, not because they're perfect, but because their love will not make you question your worth. You will look back and wonder why you ever settled for less. You will feel grateful for the pain because it led you here. You will feel proud because you grew, and you will understand something powerful. The moment you stop accepting bare, minimum love is the moment you start receiving the love you always deserved. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize that peace is not something you stumble into. It's something you protect, something you choose, something you guard with a kind of quiet strength most people don't even recognize in themselves until they are pushed too far. And that moment, the moment you decide to protect your peace, is the moment you begin setting boundaries, firm ones, clear ones, unapologetic ones. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about letting the right people in. It's about understanding the difference between being kind and being used, between being understanding and being disrespected, between being supportive and being drained. You reach a point where you look at your life and say, I'm done bleeding for people who don't even bring bandages. It's strange how long it takes for people to recognize their own worth. For years, some people give themselves away in pieces. Time, energy, love, comfort. They bend until they nearly break because they think being needed is the same as being valued. They think saying yes makes them a good person. But the truth is, the world is full of people who will take everything you give and still ask for more. Not because they're evil, just because they have no limits. And when someone has no limits, you become the one who needs them. That's where boundaries enter. That's when life begins to shift. You start saying no, and suddenly you feel something you forgot you were allowed to feel: control, power, strength, freedom. That first no feels like ripping off chains you didn't realize were wrapped around your spirit. But what surprises most people is not how freeing it feels to set boundaries. It's how uncomfortable it becomes. Not because boundaries are wrong, but because you've trained people to expect your constant availability, your softness, your willingness to sacrifice. When you draw a line, they don't see it as protection, they see it as change, and change scares them. This is where most people fail. Not because they don't know how to set boundaries, but because they don't know how to handle the reaction. Someone gets offended, someone calls them selfish, someone pulls away, someone says, "You're not the same anymore," and suddenly they feel guilt. The kind of guilt that comes from years of trying to keep everyone happy. But guilt is a liar. It whispers that protecting yourself is wrong. It whispers that prioritizing your mental and emotional health makes you difficult or demanding. It whispers that if you set boundaries, you'll lose people, and maybe you will. But the ones you lose are the ones who only stayed because you had none. Imagine a friend who always calls you at their convenience, never yours. A partner who expects forgiveness before giving accountability. A family member who demands attention but gives no respect. For years you absorb it. You tell yourself it's normal. But inside, something is slowly fading: your energy, your joy, your identity, until one day you say, "Enough," and that word becomes a promise. You stop picking up calls at midnight when you're exhausted. You stop saying yes to plans you don't want to attend. You stop allowing your emotions to be manipulated. You stop sacrificing your sanity to avoid conflict. You stop apologizing for wanting the bare minimum: respect. That's the moment you step into a new version of yourself. A version that knows peace is not something you negotiate. It's something you claim. People often misunderstand boundaries. They think boundaries are about control. They think boundaries are walls. But boundaries are doors with locks that you alone hold the keys to. You decide who enters, how long they stay, and what behavior is allowed in your space. And when someone violates those rules, you don't have to explain why the door closes. Your peace is reason enough. There's a study from the University of California that found people with strong personal boundaries experience less stress, less burnout, and fewer toxic relationships. Not because life becomes easier for them, but because they become harder to manipulate. They stop living as emotional sponges for the world. They stop absorbing everyone's problems until their own life becomes unrecognizable. It's not your job to save everyone. It's not your responsibility to fix every broken soul. It's not your duty to carry wounds that aren't yours. Sometimes the weight you're holding isn't even your own. It's simply what people handed you because they knew you'd take it. And you did, for years, because you were empathetic, because you were soft, because you cared too much. But caring without boundaries becomes a prison. And you deserve freedom. You'll notice something interesting when you set boundaries. The right people won't be offended. They'll understand. They'll listen. They'll adjust. Because love is not threatened by boundaries. Only entitlement is. One of the truest signs of maturity is realizing you don't have to explain why you're protecting your peace. You don't have to justify why you're saying no. You don't have to convince someone that your limits are valid. People who respect you won't ask you to justify your boundaries. People who need you to be boundary, less are the ones who benefited from your lack of them. There's a story about a woman who was always the helper, the emotional backbone of everyone she knew, the friend who listened, the sister who gave, the partner who healed the wounds others refused to face. She never asked for help because she learned to function on empty. But one day she collapsed, emotionally, mentally, physically, and the people she carried for years, most of them didn't show up, not out of cruelty, but because they had become so accustomed to taking that they never learned how to give. She rebuilt her life from that breakdown. And the first thing she built was her boundaries. She learned to say, I can't talk right now. She learned to say, this is not my burden. She learned to say, I won't accept this behavior. And slowly, the people who only loved her convenience disappeared. The people who loved her truth remained. And the life she built after that was healthier, calmer, stronger. Boundaries don't push people away. They reveal who's meant to be close. When you stop apologizing for your boundaries, your whole world changes. You stop feeling responsible for other people's reactions. You stop trying to soften your pain to make others comfortable. You stop feeling guilty for needing space, time, respect, honesty, or clarity. You stop losing yourself in the name of loyalty. Something powerful happens when you choose your peace. You stop chasing. You stop bending. You stop explaining. You stop exhausting yourself. And instead, you begin to attract relationships that feel safe, stable, and mutual. You begin to attract people who don't drain you, who pour into you. You begin to attract the kind of life that once felt out of reach because you were too busy pleasing people who never deserved that version of you. No one can fault you for protecting your mental health. No one can blame you for refusing to tolerate disrespect. No one can shame you for wanting a life that doesn't hurt. Boundaries are not selfish. They are self-respect in its purest form. And when you embrace them fully, without apology, you don't just change how others treat you. You change how you treat yourself. You rise, you mature, you heal, you evolve, and you finally step into the life that was waiting for you all along. There's a moment in life when you finally understand something you should have known all along. Words are easy. Words flow from anyone's mouth with little effort, little truth, and sometimes little intention. Words can make you feel safe, even when nothing is safe. They can make you believe in something that doesn't exist. They can paint illusions so beautiful that you don't notice the emptiness beneath them. But actions tell the real story. And when you start trusting actions over words, your entire world transforms. It usually happens after you've been hurt more times than you can count, not always by cruel people, but often by careless ones. People who promised things they never planned to deliver. People who said they cared but never showed up when you needed them. People who talked about a future with you while giving you nothing in the present. You stand there, confused because the words felt so warm but the behavior felt so cold. And for a long time you believed the warmth because you wanted to, you needed to. Your heart hoped the words were a preview of the actions that would follow. But at some point you wake up. You start noticing the inconsistencies, the delays, the excuses, the broken promises. You start realizing that someone who truly wants you doesn't keep making you guess. They don't make you wait for effort. They don't make you feel like you're asking for too much when all you want is honesty, respect, and consistency. You understand that someone's "I'll do better" means nothing if they repeat the same patterns. Someone's "I care about you" means nothing if they keep hurting you. Someone's "I'm just busy" means nothing when you see them make time for everyone else. There's a story about a woman who kept believing a man who swore he would change. Every time she confronted him, he apologized. Every time she walked away, he begged her to stay. Every time she gave up, he pulled her back with promises he never kept. She loved him so much that she made excuses for his behavior. She thought patience was the answer. She believed time would fix everything. One day, she finally saw what was obvious to everyone else: his actions never matched his words. She had fallen in love with what he said, not who he was. And when she left for good, he realized too late that the only apology that ever mattered was changed behavior. That's what it means to trust actions. It means you stop letting someone's voice hypnotize your heart. It means you stop believing the potential of a person more than their character. It means you no longer hold on to the one day. Hope they keep feeding you while giving you the same empty effort. When you trust actions, you begin to see people clearly. You stop overthinking. You stop analyzing conversations. You stop imagining hidden meanings in words that were empty from the start. You simply watch what people do. You observe their patterns, and patterns don't lie. People repeat behavior. People reveal themselves not through their promises, but through their priorities. It's not always easy to shift your trust, especially when someone's words feel like comfort, especially when you genuinely want them to be who they claim to be. But the truth is, loving someone doesn't mean you ignore reality. Wanting someone doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. Hoping for change doesn't mean you put your life on hold while they figure out how to treat you right. When you trust actions, you reclaim your power. You stop begging for clarity. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop making excuses for someone who doesn't show up. You stop living in confusion. Confusion is always a sign. When someone wants you, their actions make you feel calm, not anxious, not doubtful, not insecure, calm, because consistency is calming. Reliability is calming. Genuine effort is calming. There's something beautiful about reaching a point where you no longer want to be convinced by words. You want to be shown. You want proof. You want alignment. You want presence. You want someone whose behavior says, "I value you," without needing to announce it 100 times. When someone truly cares, it shows, not in grand gestures, not in dramatic speeches, but in the small things, the things they think you don't notice, the way they remember what matters to you, the way they adjust their behavior so they don't hurt you again, the way they make time even when they're busy, the way they keep their promises even when it's inconvenient, the way they show up every day, not with perfection, but with intention. Trusting actions over words is not bitterness. It's wisdom. It's self-respect. It's experience shaping your vision. It's you refusing to be fooled by emotional illusions. It's you saying, "I've been through enough to know the difference between love and sweet talk." Sweet talk can blind you. Actions open your eyes. There's a psychological study that found most people rely on verbal assurance because it gives them quick emotional relief. But the healthiest relationships are built on behavioral evidence, because behavior doesn't lie. Behavior doesn't disappear. Behavior is real, and real is what you deserve. You deserve someone whose actions show they choose you every day, not someone who makes you chase after the version of them you only see in their promises. You deserve someone whose consistency makes you forget what it felt like to doubt. You deserve someone who doesn't just talk about your worth, they treat you like you have worth. You deserve someone who doesn't use words as temporary comfort, but uses effort as permanent proof. It takes strength to stop falling for words. It takes healing to listen to actions. It takes courage to walk away from someone you love, because their behavior hurts you more than their words heal you. But that courage builds a different version of you. A version that pays attention, a version that sees clearly, a version that is no longer fooled by temporary sweetness. And here's something people don't talk about enough. When you begin trusting actions, you become more compassionate toward yourself. You stop beating yourself up for missing red flags. You stop blaming yourself for believing lies. You realize you weren't naive, you were hopeful. And hope is not a weakness. But living in illusions is. What changes everything is this: when someone says something beautiful but does something painful, you believe the pain. When someone says they love you but consistently acts like you're an option, you believe the reality. When someone says they didn't mean to hurt you but keeps doing the same thing, you believe the pattern. Actions reveal everything people try to hide. They show you their intentions, their priorities, their truth, and you deserve truth, not performances. Something powerful happens when you step into this mindset. You stop asking, "What if he meant what he said?" And you start asking, "What have his actions shown me?" You stop asking, "Maybe she'll change." And you start asking, "Has she changed?" You stop asking, "Why would he say it if he didn't mean it?" And instead ask, "Why didn't he follow through?" You stop letting people's potential blind you to their reality. You stop falling in love with the future they describe and start paying attention to the present they give. You stop holding on to someone's words and start holding on to your worth. And when someone finally comes along whose actions align with their words, you'll feel the difference instantly. You'll feel safe. You'll feel seen. You'll feel valued. Because real effort has a presence that words can never replace. Real love doesn't need to convince you. It makes you feel it. Trust actions. They tell the truth. And the truth, even when it hurts, will always guide you toward the life and love you truly deserve. There comes a moment in your life when the noise around you becomes too loud, too chaotic, too heavy to carry any longer. And instead of fighting it or running from it, you make a quiet decision, one that changes everything. You choose to step away, not because you're weak and not because you're giving up, but because something inside you whispers that there is strength in silence, clarity in distance, and truth in solitude. And when you honor that whisper, you begin to realize something that most people spend a lifetime trying to understand. You become comfortable being alone. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts with a pause, small, almost invisible. You stop chasing people who don't show up for you. You stop explaining your worth to those who never cared to understand it. You stop letting your heart be stretched thin by promises made only in convenience. You let the world move as it will, and you stop tying your peace to people who treat it like an afterthought. And in that space, something shifts. You start rediscovering yourself, the version of you that existed before the disappointments, before the heartbreaks, before life taught you its harshest lessons. You meet that person again in the quiet moments, early in the morning, when the world is still asleep, or late at night, when the weight of the day finally loosens. And you realize how long you've been ignoring them, how long you've been giving your energy to places that only drained you. Being alone teaches you to listen to your own thoughts without interruption, without judgment, without someone else's insecurities echoing against your confidence. You learn to trust your own voice again, and that voice, your voice, becomes the compass you always needed, but kept forgetting was there. You learn that you don't need someone's validation to breathe fully. You don't need someone's attention to feel worthy. You don't need someone beside you to feel alive. You start building a life that fits you instead of shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's world. You pick up old dreams you left behind. You create new ones that are bigger than anyone ever expected of you. You discover passions that were buried under the noise of trying to please people who never appreciated the effort. You begin to realize that loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is what you feel when you lose yourself. Solitude is what you feel when you find yourself again. And when solitude becomes familiar, comfortable, even beautiful, you stop fearing endings. You stop panicking when someone leaves. You stop thinking every goodbye is a failure. You understand that not every person is meant to stay, and not every loss is meant to break you. Some departures are divine, some closures are protection. Some silences speak louder than apologies ever could. When you become comfortable being alone, the things that used to scare you no longer hold power. You don't cling to people out of fear. You don't tolerate disrespect just to keep someone close. You don't swallow your truth to make someone else more comfortable. You no longer negotiate your worth. You no longer crumble under the pressure of being wanted. You stop auditioning for roles in other people's lives. You stop waiting for someone to choose you. You finally choose yourself. You start making decisions from a place of strength, not desperation. You stop settling for almost, for halfway, for maybe someday. You learn to be patient with the process, but firm with your boundaries. You give your energy to things that nourish you, not deplete you. You say no when you mean no, without guilt. And you say yes to things that pull you toward growth, even if they scare you. There is a quiet kind of power in walking into an empty room and feeling whole, in waking up alone but not feeling lonely, in sitting with your thoughts and not needing to escape them, in enjoying your own company so deeply that anyone who enters your life must enhance it, not complete it, not fix it, not fill a void, enhance it. You start seeing relationships differently. You don't chase intensity, you look for consistency. You don't crave butterflies, you crave peace. You don't get impressed by sweet words, you get anchored by meaningful actions. You no longer fall for someone just because they give you attention. You open your heart only for those who add real value. You realize that genuine connection doesn't rush in, it arrives gently, naturally, without pretending, without pressure, without games. And because you've learned to stand on your own, you become harder to manipulate, harder to mislead, harder to break. You're not scared of losing people because you're no longer afraid to be alone. You know you can rebuild. You know you can start again. You know that strength doesn't come from who holds your hand, but from who you become when no one is around. People notice the shift. They sense your calm. They sense your clarity. They sense your lack of dependency. And some won't understand it. Some will feel threatened by the confidence you didn't have before. Some will try to pull you back into old patterns just to feel secure again. But you don't bend the way you used to. You don't break the way they expect. You've tasted peace, and once you've tasted it, chaos stops feeling like home. You begin to value small things more than the dramatic ones. The quiet moments of joy, a cup of tea while watching the sunset, a walk that clears your mind, music that hits your soul in a way no conversation ever could. You realize how much beauty you missed while trying to force people to appreciate you. Now you appreciate yourself. And it doesn't mean you close your heart to the world. It means you open it with intention. You love more deeply because you're no longer pouring from an empty place. You forgive easier because you understand that holding on hurts you more than letting go. You speak more honestly because you aren't afraid of losing anyone, only of losing yourself again. You give without expecting anything, but you never give so much that you disappear in the process. When you become comfortable being alone, your life transforms, not dramatically at first, but quietly, gracefully. You stop rushing, you stop proving, you stop carrying people who refuse to walk beside you. Your energy becomes sacred, and you protect it with a calm, unshakable confidence. You start recognizing who deserves access to you and who doesn't. You learn that being alone is not a punishment, it's a reset, a rebirth, a reconnection with the strength you were born with, but kept forgetting was there. You rise not because someone lifts you, but because you finally lift yourself. And when you return to the world, with that strength, with that clarity, with that unshakable inner peace, you don't come back as the person who left. You come back evolved, grounded, whole. And that is when life begins to change in ways you never imagined. Because the moment you become comfortable being alone, you become unstoppable. There comes a point in your life when you start to realize something deeply unsettling, yet profoundly liberating. You are not just attracting people or opportunities or experiences. You are attracting the reflection of what you believe you deserve. Not consciously, not intentionally, but quietly, beneath the surface of everything you say and everything you do. Your beliefs become the architects of your reality. They shape your relationships, your choices, your patterns, your path. And once you realize that, you can no longer pretend that life is happening to you. You see that life is responding to you. When you believe you deserve love, you stop accepting the kind of affection that wounds you and call it passion. When you believe you deserve respect, you stop making excuses for the disrespect you've been tolerating. When you believe you deserve peace, you stop allowing chaos to disguise itself as excitement. And when you believe you deserve more, you stop settling for less. But this understanding doesn't appear out of nowhere. It usually arrives after you've been cracked open by the weight of your own experiences. When you've given too much, trusted too hard, stayed too long, fought too desperately to keep connections that were never meant to be yours. You look back one day and realize that the people you kept choosing were mirrors, not of who you were, but of what you believed you deserved at the time. You attracted inconsistency because you thought consistency was too much to ask for. You accepted half love because you didn't believe whole love existed for you. You welcomed temporary people because you didn't believe anything lasting was possible for you. You didn't see your worth, so the world didn't show it back to you. But the moment you begin to question that pattern, the moment you start asking yourself why the same type of pain keeps finding its way into your life, that's the moment the shift begins. Not loud, not dramatic, not instant. Slow, quiet. It starts inside you long before it ever shows up in your outside world. You look at yourself differently. You listen to your thoughts more carefully. You hear the doubts you ignored. You confront the insecurities you tried to hide. And you finally recognize the truth. Every time you said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. Every time you said, "I'll handle it," when you shouldn't have. Every time you said, "I understand," when you really needed support. You were teaching the world how to treat you by showing it how you treated yourself. And when that realization hits, it changes the entire way you move through life. You begin to understand that boundaries aren't walls, they're mirrors. They reflect how much you value yourself. You don't set boundaries to keep people away. You set them to protect the parts of you that took too long to rebuild. You don't walk away because you're angry. You walk away because you finally understand your worth. You don't demand better from others. You choose better for yourself. When you believe you deserve more, the world adjusts around you. You stop chasing people who constantly run from their own truth. You stop begging for love from those incapable of giving it. You stop shrinking yourself to make space for others who refuse to rise. You stop apologizing for expecting effort, honesty, consistency. You stop accepting the bare minimum and calling it loyalty, because something inside you is awakening. Something powerful, something that's been buried beneath years of doubt and hesitation. You start hearing your own voice again, the one you silenced to keep the peace, the one you ignored to avoid being alone, the one you abandoned because someone convinced you that you weren't enough. Now that voice doesn't whisper anymore. It rises, it takes the lead, and when you follow it, everything begins to shift. Your energy changes, your choices change, your pace changes. You move with more intention, more clarity, more self-respect. You stop tolerating the things that used to drain you. You no longer force conversations. You no longer wait for people to become who you hoped they were. You no longer cling to potential. You choose presence. You begin attracting people who match your growth instead of your wounds. People who see your value, not because you convince them, but because they recognize it. People who don't take your kindness as an opportunity to take advantage. People who give as much as they receive. People who show up with the same honesty, effort, and courage you bring. And you realize you didn't manifest them. You grew into the version of yourself who belonged in their world. Life has always been ready to give you more, but you weren't ready to receive it, not until you healed the beliefs that told you weren't worthy of it. And healing is not a straight path. It's not a clean journey. It's messy, painful, humbling. It forces you to face every part of yourself you tried to outrun. You look at your patterns, your fears, your emotional scars. You look at the way you've been loving others more than they ever loved you. You look at the way you've abandoned yourself over and over just to keep someone else comfortable, and you decide no more. You step into a new space where your worth is not negotiable, where your heart is not a playground, where your effort is not taken for granted, where you don't have to beg to be chosen or fight to be seen. You stop being available to everything and everyone. You stop offering pieces of yourself to people who never earned the privilege of holding them. You stop believing that love is supposed to hurt. Because now you know better, you start showing up differently. You speak with more confidence. You stand up straighter. You walk with intention. Not louder, not prouder, just more certain, more grounded, more aware. You no longer fear losing people. You fear losing yourself. And that fear becomes the anchor that keeps you aligned with your worth. You attract different energy because you are different energy. You attract stability because you exude calm. You attract honesty because you no longer entertain lies. You attract respect because you respect yourself. You attract deeper connections because you no longer settle for shallow ones, and the world around you adjusts to your self-belief like gravity adjusting to mass, quietly, inevitably, naturally. You begin to realize that everything you once begged for becomes effortless when you stop begging for it. You don't chase anymore. You don't plead. You don't push. You don't force. You allow. You align. You trust. Because the moment you change what you believe you deserve, you begin attracting everything meant for the person you are becoming, not the person you used to be. You understand now that you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. You were never unlovable. You were loving the wrong hearts. You were never too complicated. You were trying to be understood by those incapable of depth. You were never difficult. You were simply growing in places others refused to evolve. Now your life becomes a reflection of your self-worth. People treat you the way you treat yourself. Opportunities rise to meet your expectations. Peace becomes your baseline. Love becomes softer, steadier, purer, and you realize the truth that was always waiting for you to accept it. When you raise your standards, you don't lose people. You lose the ones who were never meant for you, and you make space for the ones who always were. Because at the end of the day, you attract what you believe you deserve, and when you finally believe you deserve more, you receive more than you ever knew was possible. In the end, everything you're searching for begins with you, your belief, your standards, your voice, your courage. The world doesn't hand you your worth. It reflects the worth you show to yourself. When you rise, life rises with you. When you decide you deserve more, everything that isn't aligned with your value quietly falls away. And when you finally choose yourself, not out of ego, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, you step into a life where love feels safe, respect feels natural, and peace becomes your new home. This is the moment where everything shifts, not because the world suddenly changed, but because you finally did. And once you do, once you stand in the truth of your own worth, no man, no circumstance, no past, and no fear will ever have the power to play with your heart again. You become the kind of woman life can't overlook, the kind of soul no one forgets, and the kind of force that only attracts what she knows she deserves. Because you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You're choosing yourself fully, fiercely, unapologetically, and that is where your real power begins.